Greetings to all. It's Albie back today. I'm going to be doing a video for you today about Sasquatch. I did a video a while back called Both Sides Are Correct, and I thought I made it clear in that video that there are two distinct types of Sasquatch. And then I went back and I watched the video, and I was like, you know what? I didn't really explain about the two separate types of Sasquatch that there are. I didn't really go into detail about that, so that's what this video is going to be. I often speak about type 1 and type 2, and people don't know what the hell I'm talking about, so I'll explain that. So there's two types of Bigfoot, right? The first type of Sasquatch I call the big red giants. They live in the national forest. They live in the big timber forest. They have language. They can speak English. They have advanced technology. And when I say that, I mean that the type 1, the big red ones that I call the type 1, do work with extraterrestrials, not all of them, and let me explain this, okay? And this is just the type 1. There are groups of these type 1 Sasquatch that have craft, technology and craft. There are human beings that have craft that can fly to the moon. There are Sasquatch that have craft that can fly to the moon. I don't have a craft that can fly to the moon, and not all Sasquatch that are type 1 have craft that can fly to the moon, but Elon Musk has a craft that can fly to the moon. He's a human being. And then there's another dozen other people that have craft that can fly, out into space right now. So when I say that these type 1 are advanced technology and they have craft, that doesn't mean all the groups of them that you run into will have that. But they are that type of Sasquatch where they are probably not from Earth, I don't believe, or if they are, they're very ancient. And like I said, they're big. They're 12-foot. Males are red. They're going to be red. They're going to look like giant orangutan with the long hair here. The females are going to be 9 foot. They're very friendly to humans. They're out all day and night. They're out all the time. They're not aggressive to humans at all. They're very friendly with humans. They tolerate humans very well. They're totally cool with people. And once again, like I said, some of the groups of those that you'll run into, some of them have craft within their groups, technology. Some of them don't. Some groups don't have all that stuff. Just like you'll run into a hermit in the desert, and he doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't have a TV. He doesn't, I remember for years ago, there was this guy that lived out there in Pinion Hills. He lived on a burro. He would come into town on a burro about 18 to 20 days. He'd be out in the desert. He'd walk back into town. He'd load up his burro with supplies, and he'd go back into the desert. So there are Sasquatch that don't have anything. They don't, that type of one that don't have any technology. They can go and get it if they wanted to, but it's not their thing. And then there's human beings that, like I said, same thing. These human beings that are chasing technology, and Elon Musk wants to build rockets and he wants to fly them. And so the type 1, like I said, even though they have technology, not every type 1 group that you run into will have technology. Not every type 1 group will have a device that allows them to portal or cloak or disappear or turn into an orb, however they move about like that. Shift out of dimension, those are the type 1. Any Sasquatch that you see doing anything like that is definitely a type 1. These Sasquatch work directly with Palladians. Not all of us, not all human beings on Earth work with ETs or a chosen shaman, chosen medicine man. They're chosen by the star people to work between the star people and a human being. There are the type 1 Sasquatch. They have some of them, the elders work with Zeta Reticuli Greys and Palladians. I know that, and I'm sure a few others, but I've seen them with the Greys and the Nordics. And so I can tell you that the type 1 do have technology, do disappear, do cloak, do have craft, and they are the reason that people, call them the mystical or the mystic or the magical ones, or it's not that they're magical. It's just that they do have a technology, just like we do. And then the levels of technology is like, each group may have a different level of technology. Some groups may have a craft or two within their group, and then other groups might not have anything. They might just be running out there without any technology, out there in the forest, in national forests here in America. So like I said, they have a language, they have their own language, they can also speak English. The elders of those groups will speak English to you. They are very friendly with humans, but they also are very far from humans. They don't live anywhere close to people. They're going to live in a national forest, 5,000 feet, 6,000 feet, 8,000 feet, 10,000 feet, depending on time of year. They'll go up and down. But they're always going to be in the timber. Those don't go into the swamplands, from what I understand. But I've never been too far east, so I don't know. I know they have big red ones back east, but I still believe that they're in timber forests back east, not just in swamps. I haven't heard a lot of big red ones, or what I call a type 1 in the south. Usually it's what they call the skunk apes, or the rougarou, woolly boogers. Those, I believe, are what I call the type 2. So I'm going to talk about the type 2. The type 2 are a smaller version. They are, I'm sorry, let me go back to the type 1. The type 1s have very human face, very Native American face, very human face. Okay. Now the type 2 are very, a wide variety of look, from gorilla, ape to almost human look. They are the abundant of the two. They live right up to human being. They live right up at the city limit. And then at nighttime, they will use the railroad tracks and the concrete washes leading from the hills right into the city, and they'll go to Papa John's and still dumpster dive. Now, these smaller black ones, they have, they don't really speak. They don't have a speech as I have ever seen. They are more the chatter, very chimp sound, a lot of screaming sounds. They're super aggressive if you try to get close to their area to where they're sleeping. They are nocturnal, so the main group will be sleeping in the daytime, and they'll be surrounded by 2 or 3 sentinels outside of the group that are watching that group. And if you go near that group, they'll chase you out in the middle of daytime. So only the sentinels will be awake in the daytime, usually 3 of them around the main group. And then the group, whatever size that is, will be asleep in the daytime. All the young ones and will go out, and they go into the suburbs, run across people's rooftops, run across walls of people's yards, and then run across rooftop to rooftop. They like doing that. So the small black ones are what I understand as an American primate, or a Earth primate. Like I said, the first big red ones, I don't really know if they're from Earth. They have technology, they have craft, they change, they go in and out of dimensions, they do all kinds of crazy stuff. So I don't really consider them as something that came from Earth. I might not be on that one. But the smaller black ones, the males are 8 foot, the females are 7 foot. Like I said, they can be very stocky, bulky, or they can be very skinny and thin and lankety, depending on where they're at. They are the more abundant of the species. You say that, I say like 30% of what people encounter are probably the type 1, the big red forest giants, and the other 70% that people encounter are the type 2, the smaller black earth primates, maybe Neanderthal. I would say out of the two, I would say that they're a Neanderthal and not the big forest giants, or not. There's something else. Maybe that's what people refer to as God, I'll think of it in a minute. But the Bible has words for that. A lot of Bible has words for what they call those things. So the big red ones I see as something that's not from this earth, and the small black ones I believe are from. Now the smaller black ones I said are aggressive. If you try to go through their area where they may have a group sleeping in the daytime, and they will chase you out of there very aggressively. They might hurt you. What they do is with stone throwing is they getting your attention, letting you know that you're in their area, and you have to be respectful and leave a portion of whatever you take from that forest for them. If you catch a certain amount of fish, you need to leave some for them. Acknowledge them. Leave that somewhere hanging up in a tree. Same thing if you catch a deer, you have to leave a couple of hind leg portion for them, and let them acknowledge it hanging in a tree. That's for you, because they're pretty much always watching you. If you're in an area where you know they are, and you can feel them watching you, it's always good to be respectful to either kind, to the big red ones or the black ones, by leaving a portion of whatever you take from basically the refrigerator when you go into the forest, and you harvest whatever it is, fish or animal, a chipmunk, squirrel. You have to leave them a portion of that, especially if you know they're in the area and they're watching you. So the smaller black ones are more abundant, and they're the ones that we have right here that will walk into the city here in LA. They are of the like I said, 70% of what you run into will be the smaller black earth primate, and only 30% will be the big red ones from the national forest. The national forest ones here in California and within the western states here, they're primarily in the forest, not even close to anybody. Unless you live in a forest village somewhere high, 6,000 feet, they may be close to you, but they don't dumpster dive. They don't go close to people at all. The closest they'll get to people is a campground that's pretty off the beaten path. High altitudes. I know here in California that the farther south you go and into the deserts, it's pretty much all the type 2 smaller species in Southern California and in the deserts. Here we have them in the deserts. Yes, they're in the deserts. They're out there in the desert, just no tree in the scrub brush and the cactus. They're out there and they're nocturnal. They're out all night long, and they're eating burrows. There's tons of burrows here now in the western states, southern western states. There's wild boar, wild pigs everywhere, feral hogs, just about everywhere. It's just like it's going on in the rest of America. We have it here in California. So that's really increasing the populations a lot lately. So they're showing up around cities. I get reports from local people telling me that they can't believe they saw it in their city down the hill. I said, well, and then I tell them, I've had reports that are even deeper into the city from where they live, where people have seen them at nighttime. So it's amazing how far they will go into the city at night and how close they will live to people. They will actually set up in a group of trees and in a place where people don't go, you know, a marshy area, just a place that people don't go. And they'll set up there right behind a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a college or a truck stop, or I mean, right at the edge of suburbia. And they'll stay there, and as soon as it gets dark and everybody's gone, they'll come out. That's what the small black ones do, and they're, like I said, they're the ones that will be everywhere. They're going to be everywhere. They're going to be on the farmlands and the hillsides and the chaparral and the swamps. And they're the more abundant of the two. They're very aggressive. I deal with the big red ones, and I've dealt with them. I've spoken with them. I've traded with them. I've worked with them for years. But the smaller black ones, they just stand there off and look at me. They won't speak to me. They won't trade with me. They won't attack me. I can turn my back on them, and they won't come at me. But I know my boundaries with them and where I can go and I can't go. And I never gone in past their boundaries. So that I've never given them a reason for them to be aggressive with me. But I know out of the two species that they are the ones that are aggressive. They do understand sign language. I can speak to them with sign language. They understand when I tell them sign language, yes and no and hungry. They get all that very easily, and they shake their head yes and no. They shake their, but they don't speak. They don't speak. The big red ones I grew up with in Mammoth, California, I spent 9 years with, they speak perfect English. It was very deep and very scratchy. I mean deep, like very deep, because they're huge. So they have a deep, very deep voice, scratchy, deep voice. But they spoke English fine. They mimicked whatever I said. They can just, you know, they say it 2 or 3 times, and then they got it, and then they're ready for another word. And those, even the young red ones, were doing things that I couldn't believe a lot of times. They were doing this stuff. The younger type one, the big red ones, they're young that I played with. I got to play with. They're young. They were just unbelievable at 5 foot, at 7 years old. The way they can move. I mean, I was quick as a kid. I was a soccer player, a championship soccer player. I had lungs. I could run through the forest forever, so I think they really appreciated me that I could run with them for a long time through the forest at 7,000 feet and not tire, you know. But I couldn't climb a tree like they did. They just went like, phew, straight up. And then I was like, what the hell? And then same thing when climbing rocks. They would just hit a rock face, and then they would leap, and a 30-foot leap from the ground. They'd take a 30-foot running leap and then hit the top of a rock 30 feet up in the air, just like at 7 years old, at 5 foot tall. Now the adults can leap, I'd say at 40 foot, 45 vertical straight leap, an adult, with running and a jump. And I know that a lot of people say, well, the big red ones don't go in trees. Like, well, they do. I've seen the big red one, male, 12 foot, you know, they weigh 1,000 pounds, 12 foot, 1,200 pounds they weigh. I've seen a dozen of them climb a puzzle pine tree. You know, a puzzle pine tree as big as a Volkswagen, you know, big tree up in the national forest, near Sequoia areas. And these, you can get 15 adult males up there, and they play this game where they walk out to the ledge of one big branch that was about this big ground, and they'd all get on it and jump on it till it cracked, and it went boom, like an explosion. And then about a quarter mile away, there would be 15 more males on another tree, and they would chant, make a chant, and they would do the same thing. They'd jump on this branch, and boom, they'd break that big giant branch off about 50, 100 feet up in the air, and then they'd all jump to different branches, and they did a game of it. You know, we're talking about 30 Sasquatch at one time that I've seen at one time, 15 on this tree and 15 on the other side of the river on this tree. And then below them would be women and children Sasquatch watching this game that they did. So they did some amazing things Um, the big red ones are the ones that people will say, hey, they did this, they disappeared, they cloaked, they vanished from front of my eyes on a flashlight. Yes, that you saw that. Those are the type 1, those are the big red ones, are the ones that are very cool with human beings. Um, be nice to them, they'll be nice to you. The black ones, if you run into those black ones at nighttime, if you run into the daytime, just avoid them, because what you run into, if you see one at the daytime, it's going to be a guard. He's going to be watching the group. And he's going to let you know you can't go any closer to that. So you know that there's a group in there. If you see one in the daytime, it's obviously you're walking to a group. Okay, now if you run into one in the nighttime or at dusk or dawn, you probably just ran into one hunting or a group of them hunting, and there's never one. Always know that whichever one gets your attention and you're looking at, he's got his 2 buddies coming. I mean, there's one that's going to get your attention. Always. He's going to let you see it. But know that there is one that is half the distance from that on either side of you already, that close, and you don't even know it. You don't even know it. So if you think you're looking at 130 yards away, and you can hear him and he's making noise, and he's poking his head out and looking at you, and he's got your attention, know that there's another one 15 feet on either side. There's another one already that close. Because that's how they work. And he's not telling you. It's just they're there. They're there. All right. So I hope everybody understands that everybody's right. There are type 1 Sasquatch that have technology that disappear, that cloak, that vanish, that have craft known as tic-tac craft. Yes, I hate to tell you, but from my information, from my people and my native people up north, that there are certain groups of the type 1 Sasquatch that fly the tic-tac craft. You heard it here first. Probably not, but some of you already know that. Okay, so the type 2, like I said, I believe is more of an Earth-based primate that's from Earth, and is an advanced primate. I'm not sure if it has the vocal box as the type 1. The type of 1 has the vocal box. It can speak. It's not like Chewbacca. The type 2 is like a Chewbacca. It doesn't have a vocal box. It doesn't speak. It doesn't speak. Or it never spoken to me, personally. I mean, they understand sign language, as I said. They understand yes and no and food and nighttime, daytime, go, here, there, me, you. They understand, and they have hand signs for that. But as far as language, they chatter. They have like a monkey language, which is different. And I never heard the black ones ever speak English. Okay, so you're going to either run into the 2 types. You're going to run into an 8-foot or smaller black one. That's the more abundant type. And if you're in the lowlands or you're close to the city, that's what you're going to run into. If you're in camping in Yosemite or you're in the high Rockies and they're big and red, you can probably talk to them. You don't have to be scared of them. You don't have to run. Just hold your ground, stand your ground, be nice. Don't look them in the eye. Either one. Don't look them in the eye. Be respectful. Look them in the chest, in the chin. Do not make eye contact for very long. You can glance up at the eye, but don't keep eye contact with the big red ones. It's kind of disrespectful to them because we're little brothers. So we have to be very respectful. I can't explain to you how intelligent and knowledgeable, but the big ones, the big red ones, are like monks. Imagine when you run into them that you're speaking to a monk, right? At the level that they're at spiritually. I know some of them act like they'll yell or scream at you or act like a monster because they want you to leave. And it's easy to do that for them. And they don't mean to hurt you, but they just want you to leave that area. They're not going to hurt you. So I've had the big red ones one time. It's funny because when you're with them when I was a child, they would read my mind and telepathically. And so what I had in my mind as a big scary roar or a big sound that would scare me is what they produced when one time when they had to scare me. I went to an area that they didn't want me to go in, and one of the big red ones, he did a yell, and I've heard a couple people say they've heard this too. It started as an elephant wail, an elephant, and then halfway through, about 10 seconds of elephant going on, it turned into a lion's roar halfway through, and finished 10 seconds of lion's roar. So I started elephant to a lion's roar. And when it was done to me. It was done as this back Bigfoot was like 5 foot away from me. I mean, he was right there, just like blasting on me, right? And I looked, there's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there. And I can see 30 yards into the brush until it gets thicker. I see absolutely nothing. But this whale, and I ran back because there was a main river. It was a main river, and my older brothers were fishing it, and there was a little creek that fed into it. So I wanted to hit that creek, walk up it about a block or two, and fish for some smaller brook trout in that little creek that fed the big one. And I was up about a half block, and that thing yelled at me, and it basically was saying, get back with your group, right? Because you're too little. I was like 7. My brothers were 15, 17. I was 7. So it yelled at me, basically just to force me back with my group, and I was like, oh, okay. So it did, but it started as an elephant's wail, like a perfect savanna African elephant wail was just wail out with its trunk up, and then halfway through just turned into an African lion's roar, just the loudest lion's roar, and it was like I could feel the wind pushing. And I ran back to my brothers at the creek. I was like, "Did you guys hear that?" They're like, "Yeah, what the hell was that?" I was like, "I'm not going over there again." And they're like laughing, so we stayed by the creek and kept going. And I was like, yeah, so I know it did it. So that's the first time I think they did something in front of me, one of those that did something to me cloaked. And that particular one wasn't the one from the group that I hang out with normally, because we were farther down the river, so we were probably like in another clan's area, and one of those clan members just what they'll do is when you're down there fishing in that area, it's pretty deep in the area, they'll put one sentinel on you to just watch you. He'll walk through, like, how they pace you. They'll pace you from like 30 yards. You can just see them moving in the trees. They'll stop. You'll walk. Sometimes you can't see them at all. They're there. You can hear them walking. They'll stop. And then you run a little, and then you stop, and you can hear them run and stop. And you laugh at them, and you point because they're there. I would point at them and laugh at them. And then I'd run really fast for like about a quarter mile, and I'd haul ass full speed, and then I'd tap, and then I'd wait for them to catch up to me, and then I'd laugh at them. But it was common when I was a kid for them to pace me and my brothers while I was fishing. I'd tell my brothers, "Hey, do you hear them following us?" And they're like, "Yeah, they're out there." I was like, "Yeah." So that was pretty interesting as a kid growing up, having them pace us all the time. But then when I was by myself, alone in a certain meadow, they would come out in the open and start talking to me, and they would take fish from me and then offer me snakes. They offered me a whole beaver one time. I've never even seen a beaver in the area that they have, but they gave me a whole beaver one time, just a fucking 50-pound beaver. And another time they gave me like a 6-pound snake with the head just ripped off, and they threw it in front of me, and it was squirming around with the blood squirting out. And the funny thing is, when they did those two things to me, I had just turned around and it's meadow, and I turned around, and then it was thrown on the ground right behind me, like out of nowhere. Same thing. I saw a Sasquatch walk behind a bush, right? I saw his big head. So then I ran around the bush to see him, and then there was just a big beaver laying there on the ground. And I was just walked through there like 3 minutes before, and there's a big dead beaver just laying there on the ground. And I was like, I pick up the snake, and I was like, well, I'll take the snake. I'm not taking that beaver. So I left the beaver there, but those big red ones are that was part of me dealing with them, as part of my training and understanding them. And later on, a few years later, I had a craft come down into my house in the back, or I'm sorry, in the San Gabriel Mission is where I went to. I grew up in the city of San Gabriel, and 2 blocks away from the mission. I attended their catechism, which is called Sunday school. And one day at 3:30 in the afternoon, when I was riding my bike onto the parking lot of the mission, a Palladium beam ship comes over my head, and then and inside of the beam ship, a door opens up, and that big red tall Sasquatch, 12 foot, is inside the doorway looking down at me, smiling. And so he's standing there looking down at me for like a minute or two, and then I can't see him because he would disappear. The craft's turning real slow, and it's wobbling real bad. So I see him in the doorway, he's smiling, and then it would turn again, he was in the doorway smiling. And then the third time, the door had closed and it floated off that way. But that's how I know that that was a Palladium craft, and I'd seen that. I'd been in that craft before in my yard. That craft had come to my yard. That craft had taken my whole family one time in, it was 1975. We're driving in the middle of the desert. All my brothers and sisters, my mom and dad, and we had the typical abduction out there in the middle of the desert on our way to Trona, California. And we kind of stopped going there after that. My parents were terrified, and I was like, come on, it's nothing. They didn't probe us, they just saying hello. So I know that the type 1, big red, orangutan-looking Sasquatch, work with ETs. They go off planet, they have high technology, and the black ones, the little ones, don't. So I want everybody to understand that you guys are both right. Both sides are right. You have some that are just like a primate. They are little black forest ninjas, athletes, crazy athletes with crazy abilities. And then there's the big red ones that do have technology and will disappear in a flash of light and do fly around in an orb coming out of craft before they manifest into their physical being. So whatever people are seeing, and as far as the Sasquatch world, both sides are correct, okay? Namaste, have a good evening. Hope this recorded everything. Peace out.